Hi guys, my name is Doug. Welcome to Third Stall Garage. This is a channel about the restoration of a 66 Mustang convertible named Vin. And I bought the car in boxes and pieces, tore it apart down to straight good sheet metal, and now I'm building it back up. Last episode 19 was about the installation and welding in of the kick panels. Today's episode, we're gonna put the firewall in. I'm excited to see this piece go in place. Right now, it's pinned in with some sheet metal screws and located. And in this episode, I'll figure out where I'm gonna put the welds and show you how I weld it in. Thanks for being part of Third Stall Garage. If you like to learn more about Mustang restoration or do-it-yourself auto repairs, I would love it if you'd click subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and I'll respond. I've had a huge amount of people help me answering questions with this project. If I can do that for you as well, I would love to. Stay tuned and see how it goes. So the firewall is in the proper location and located. It's attached to the kick panel on the sides. I put a screw in to locate it to the fender apron, which will also set this kind of the depth and the up and down. Sheet metal screw into the torque box. Same thing on the other side. So in terms of prepping for this, I'm gonna do a couple things. One is I'm going to trace the outside of this mounting flange so that when I take the firewall back out, I know where to prep that for welding. Just using a Sharpie. So I'm gonna walk around and do that all the way in the car, around the firewall. I'll do the same on the edge where it hits the floor. Sorry about the focusing. And then the firewall will have to come back out. One of the things I'll need to figure out is, am I gonna drill holes on this side and then weld from here? Or do I drill holes on this side of the firewall and weld from this side? You know, in this situation, neither will be visible, so I will probably choose to put holes in the fender apron flange and weld that to the firewall. On the bottom of where the firewall meets the floor pan, I will drill holes in the firewall and then clean up the floor pan and prep that to receive the weld. So I think that will be my methodology. So I carefully took a lot of measurements from the inside of the Mustang and overlaid them onto the back of the fire panel. These two trapezoids here are the mounting points for the back of the front frame rail. And then you can see how the torque box goes across here. And that's represented by this line up across the top. I think I'm gonna jog this lip down a little bit so that it matches the firewall a little bit better. Just a lot of careful measuring with the tape measure or ruler. And then I used a Sharpie to put in the dots as to where I want my plug weld pattern to go. Again, I'm going about 1.5 inches all the way around. That's probably excessive, but I would rather be excessive than the opposite and have it be weak. Across the bottom where it meets the floor pan, I did go about every 2 inches there. I figured this was a little less structural because it's going to the floor pan sheet metal, whereas these go to frame members. This goes to the torque box, which is structurally critical. Over the tunnel, I decided to stagger it just to take advantage of that width. I went back to a single line here. This side, again, you can see the front frame rail outline, the holes that I'll drill, and then holes that I'll drill here that will mount this surface to the torque box. Here are the holes for the flange where it'll mount to the rocker panel. And the part up here where it goes up, I will clean that off, and then I will drill holes in the back of the fender panel, fender apron. There we go. Feeling good about how it's coming along. It'll be a little nervous too. I think what I'm worried about is once I get this in, how do I pull it all nice and tight so there aren't gaps. I think if there's a gap between this, like for example, a gap between this and the front frame rail, that's not going to be structurally sound at all. So I'm going to have to figure out how to pull that all together close. Make sure that this fits in with the pocket that's in the torque box. And then pull these tight on the sides. And it's probably going to take some hammering and pounding to get it all to lay the way I want. Once that's done, I will fill in these relief cuts that I had. I don't know how big they're going to be. If they're really big, I'll have to cut a slice in. I may have cut those too big, but I can't undo it now. I can only fix it. So next step, drill a bajillion holes, sand it all smooth, deburr the holes on both sides, spray it with weld through primer, and then clean up the material, the mating surfaces on the car side as well. So I drilled about 100 holes, deburred them, sanded them down, sanded the mating surface underneath, applied weld through primer, and I am doing my final check. Again, check, fit before you weld everything. I was ready to get the welder out. Then in my final time fitting, I realized I've got a problem. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this or not, but there is 3/8, maybe a ½ inch gap between the back of my firewall, right in this area, and my torque box. And there's similar problem on the other side. So while I think the firewall is correctly located here, the bottom is kind of kicked up, which is leaving a gap right in this area, which means I'm not going to be able to weld that. Now, I wondered about that, and that makes sense logically why that would be, because originally the firewall, sorry, dropped my hammer. Originally, the firewall was intended to be underneath the floor pan. So the fact that it is on top of the floor pan would mean that it would kind of kick out a little bit. Or if the floor pan shims it up, and yeah, I don't know how to describe it. The bottom of the firewall is going to angle out a little bit more because the floor pan's stopping it from dropping down all of the way. So I think my solution for that is to take it back out again. I'm going to straighten this curve, make it flat, and then recurve it up about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch. And if I bend it up too far, once I get this in, then I'll just have to use a mallet and a hammer and pound it back down. So yeah, about 100 holes later, we're back to pulling it back out and continuing to test fit it. All right, I think the firewall is in for the last time. Feeling pretty decent about the way that it fits. In terms of assembly order or welding order, I think I am going to start with these welds along the side here. Turn my welder off. I'll do these welds along here, and that will kind of, I'm not welding the fender apron on yet. You can see that I drilled and cleaned out those holes, but I'm gonna attach this after the cowl, I think. So I think I'll do these 2 corners first. And then my thought is, You know, obviously I've got a big gap here yet, but I overbent that on purpose. I've got a good fit at the top here in terms of the firewall sheet metal is laying nice and flush against the torque box. So I'm gonna start on those top welds and then work my way down and force the sheet metal to lay down as I go. So I'll work from top down on this side, then top down on that side, and I'm gonna do the tunnel last. I'm gonna start in the middle and work my way down the sides. Hopefully the metal will lay down as I go. I'm sure it'll take a little massaging. I've got a hammer and we'll make it fit. So I'm working my way down. These welds are done. The danger in showing welds is I feel like there's some professional welders out there who are judging me. I had troubles pulling these tight up against the torque boxes. So what I did, which worked better than I thought, is to put 2 sheet metal screws in between my plug welds. That pulled it down nice and tight. So then I'll weld these 3, 4 in, pull the sheet metal screws out, then weld that shut. What you need to be careful of those to make sure as the self-tapping sheet metal screw, or if you drill a hole through and then run a sheet metal screw, that the shavings don't fall behind and get stuck between the two. That helped. I should be able to finish welding these all the way down. Then I'll move to the side and make sure that sits flush and weld it in place. So I was just editing and putting this video together and realized that I was focused more on getting the firewall to lay down and be welded nice and strong and flat, that I wasn't focused on capturing everything on video. So I apologize for that. I'm inserting this back into the video to cover a few things I missed. Let's turn around and I want to show you a few ways that I got the sheet metal to lay down while I welded it. All right, ignore all the beautiful welds that are all done. I don't want you to see that until the end of the video. I mentioned in the last clip about putting the 2 screws in right there to pull the sheet metal together. A few other things that I did was I used the long clamp here in order to pull the top of the tunnel together. You also can use the hole that I think the heater box or something goes in there to clamp this spot to the front frame rail, or you can use that hole there to get a clamp in on the other side. The other thing that I did was just simply used a 2x4 and my wonderful wife to come out and push down on it, and that just pushed it down, and then I welded kind of behind it. So all of those techniques together with some pounding with a hammer, and you can see the result that the firewall sits down real nice. Just finished up all the plug welds. Firewall is securely in. Happy with the way everything laid down nicely. It does help if you pull the sheet metal together, plug weld it. Like for example, right here, if this edge here is curled up a little bit, once that weld is done, it's easy to tap this down and it lays down. The last thing I need to do is fill this slit that I put in. Same thing on the other side. You can see I just cut a thin little strip in there. It's kind of wedged in. I'm gonna weld on both sides of it, and then I should be able to bridge that gap at the top. I didn't fill in this spot here because there's base metal below it, so I'm just gonna fill that whole thing with weld, which should just help with strength. One more step and the firewall should be done. I'll weld that in. Firewall is cleaned up and finished. I'll give myself 1.5 thumbs up for this job. Feel really good about all the plug welds, feel really good about the fitment. This slot that I welded up, I could have done better on. That side actually came out okay. The driver's side, doesn't look real great. What happened was I welded it, ground it down too thin, then the welds burned through. When I ground it down, a couple holes poked through. So I welded those up, then ground them down too far, which caused some other holes to pop up. And solid now. There's no, when I put a light behind it, there's no pinholes through. I'm gonna need to go on the underneath and clean up that weld there because it's pretty ugly on the underside. But can be done, live and learn. It will be covered with carpet someday. It's structurally sound. That's gonna wrap up this episode. Next episode will either be beginning to weld in the fender aprons, or it's gonna be the cowl. Need to figure that out yet. Thanks for staying tuned. Give it a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.